Keep up the good work, man, and stay flat, okay?
Okay, I'm a flat earther.
Oh, Dave.
And now, welcome to NonSequitur with Kyle Curtis and Steve McRae.
Well, I'm here. Steve's here. Esteban's here.
One thing missing, Kyle.
Yeah. One thing missing. And we're going to talk about that here in the next few seconds. Before we do that, NephillimFree, we see that you are in the live chat. This would be a good opportunity for you to come in and talk to us and tell us your views on evolution, because we have a whole hour and a half of literally nothing to talk about now, because Steve literally just got off the phone with Kent Hovind. And do you want to explain what Kent said, Steve?
Long story short, I don't think he knows how to schedule things properly. We basically had arranged this for tonight. He says he can't do it tonight. He said he never got confirmation. He would like to do this tomorrow night at 7 Central, which is 8 Eastern. So we are going to be moving it to 2 tomorrow, but his excuse was basically that there wasn't a confirmed thing on this for tonight, even though I know that 3 people had confirmed it with him. So
And Esteban, do you want to, since you were the one that set it up with him, do you want to kind of explain how this all came about and how we got here with no Kent Hovind?
Well, I don't exactly know how we got here without Kent Hovind, but it came about out of curiosity. One day I was like, you know what? I wouldn't mind having this debate with him, maybe expose some of the flaws in his arguments and take a different approach than Aaron Ram. And so I found, the number and called that. He answered, and I've been talking to him for a couple weeks on and off. We definitely did say Saturday, and it is Saturday.
Yeah, I think so. Today is Saturday. I mean, we could double check on that and look at the calendar. Well, yep, today is Saturday.
Yeah. So I just saw that Nephi said that he would love to come in. So we'll get you the link, Neph, and you can talk to the 3 of us about. Well, actually, you'll get some practice, Esteban. On do you know who? Are you familiar with NephillimFree?
I am not.
You will be. Oh, by the way, I just found out the Earth is flat. It's any day of the week that you want it to be. Just FYI.
Oh.
I'll go with. We'll go with Monday. I love Mondays.
Nobody
so while we wait
Monday.
on NephillimFree,
why would you pick Monday? Nobody picks Mondays.
I like going against the grain. While we wait on Nephi, Tuesday. Remember that the amazing atheist will be joining us, TJ Kirk. We look forward to that. Immediately following this show, Nathan Thompson and Fight the Flat Earth will square off. Nathan Thompson was a guest moderator last week, and I think he wanted some of the actually, by the way, Steve, did you hear what happened to Fight the Flat Earth?
No, I don't think so.
He got porn bombed, and they struck down his channel.
No, I was not aware of that. So, like a really new event, because I thought that happened. I thought there was something similar that happened a while back.
It did. He caught it last time in time. This time he didn't catch it in time.
Okay.
YouTube wouldn't reverse the strike. They told him no.
How is he getting people into his Hangouts to allowing that to happen? I'm just kind of curious.
NephillimFree, Steve's going to send you the link through Google Plus, I believe. Right, Steve?
Yeah, I already did. Okay,
I'm you
trying
have
to do it
the
with
link.
Skype, but Skype is doing another update for the billionth time.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I think from the story he told, he was having a hangout with some patrons and a couple of his moderators, I believe, and one of the moderators put the link out there in as public for some reason, and yeah, and he got porn bombed, and so they struck his channel. However, to rectify that situation, this is a really cool thing. Reds is now lending him his channel, so he's been doing his videos and debates on Red's channel. So there's Fight the Flat Earth in the live chat. Yeah, we were just talking about you and the situation with you. We hate to hear that happened, but glad that you're now using Red's channel, and I think that will wind up working out for you even better until you get your channel situated. Can I tighten my tie up? I can't, because this is a trademark look for me. I never button the top button. It's just something I don't do. We are waiting on NephillimFree. If you're just joining us because YouTube sucks with notifications, Kent was eating dinner and has requested that we move tonight's debate to Sunday at 7. So we will be having the debate with it. Actually, Esteban, do you want to take a second, introduce yourself, and tell everybody how you got involved with debating Kent Hovind in the first place?
Well, I'm an avid YouTuber. That's about the only thing about me. I got into debate several years ago, and I've always studied. I've done some debates in writing in different forums, especially Atheist Republic, and I thought it was about time to start getting a live debate going, and it just so happened that Kent Hovind was a fairly easy person to get into contact with, and I could definitely see myself having that kind of debate, especially one that, in my opinion, is very easy because the facts are on my side. So
I gotta admit, Ken is really easy to get a hold of. It's just difficult for him to keep his schedule. Yeah.
Well, this happened last time. Remember, we got up until the first time he was supposed to debate Aaron. It was supposed to be on a Thursday, and we got up until the time to do the debate. He came in, actually, said that he was having some technical issues, and then we didn't hear back from him until an hour later. We already went live like we did tonight to explain how things went on. And as we were live, Kent went on his channel and was literally answering the things that Aaron was saying on our show over there. So I mean, I don't know. This has been arranged for about a week now. Would you say, Esteban? That we
the date was definitely set for about a week. The hour took a little longer to get a hold of. Yeah.
Well, the hour, that's not as important as the day. It is now, anyway, it is now tomorrow at 7. So sorry about that. But how are we doing on getting NephillimFree in?
He doesn't have a webcam, I believe, so we're going to have to bring him in through Skype, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, so Nephi, what we're going to do is Dave's going to get you a link via Skype, because the vMix software we have requires a cam to be attached. Doesn't have to be in use, but it does require a cam. So if you don't have a cam,
it's got to pick up on that. Okay, so while we wait on that, let's continue to explain what we've got coming up. Tuesday, the 19th, JF Garepi, I believe I'm saying that right, a well-known ethnostatist and Quebecian, will be squaring off against John Perry from Stated Clearly. And I believe he told me what the subject of that was. Let me find that out. It is not should we have an ethnostate? I know that. Let's see. It's going to be is culture a true evolving entity? So that will be the topic. Is culture a true evolving entity?
It
and
sounds
then
more
following
like a meme versus meme thing. That's where they're going. That sounds like a genes versus memes thing, where you have things in society that are produced by very similar processes like evolution. They call memes.
Yeah.
Like language.
Multiple culture standards and something like that, like morality, things of that nature, things that are just evolved through evolution, through what they're similarly to what a gene would do in a population.
Mm-hmm. And then that following Tuesday, Lawrence Krauss will be with us. We'll be joining Bill Ludlow, and we'll be talking about something from nothing. So that'll be cool. I see Jim's in the chat. Oh, hello, NephillimFree.
Hey, how am I sounding?
Welcome to
Am
the
I
show.
coming through well?
Yes, it works.
Sound excellent.
Wonderful.
How are things?
I'm all right, I guess. I hope you guys are. Steve, I haven't seen you in a long time. Hope you're well.
I'm doing okay. Thank you.
That's good.
Steve,
Someone needs to introduce me to the gentleman on the top because I have not met him.
This is Esteban. He was going to have a debate with Kent Hovind tonight on evolution, and we had to move that to tomorrow. So Esteban, you want to say hello to NephillimFree?
Hello.
Nice to meet you.
And NephillimFree, why don't you take a second? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Esteban.
I was going to say, it sounds like you're from the South, and I'm currently in the South. I mean,
we're all in the South.
Yeah, I'm from the South. Yeah.
We're rising again.
I'm in South California.
We're rising again.
Steve, there's nothing Southern about California, friend. Nothing.
Take a second to introduce yourself. Tell people who you are, where you fall on the religion debate, and just sort of why you get into talking about evolution.
Yeah, okay. Well, my name is Evan. I go by NephillimFree on YouTube and other places. I opened a YouTube channel back in 2007, and I'm a young earth creationist Christian. I'm a Bible believer, and I have embroiled myself in the debate, the controversy over evolution. Shortly after I came to learn how it's not scientific and it's not true, back in 2006, 6. And so that got me very interested in it, and I jumped into the mix. I decided I wanted to have a say about it, because I think it's really an important subject. You know, where we come from, where we go, what's the purpose of human life. These things, they're determined. If biblical creation is true, then we have one set of answers to that question. And if evolution is true, it's a whole other set of answers. So I think the answers are really important.
Okay. Well, why don't you start by telling us why you do not think evolution is at all true?
Well, I think it's twofold. I think on one side, science, well, I think has provided modern science, that is post-Charles Darwin era science, has provided a mountain of scientific reasons for us to know that intelligent design is true, and a handful to know that biblical creation is true. And at the same time, I discovered that evolution theory is not science, it's actually philosophy, and the science doesn't support it, because I set out to prove to myself that what I was being told was true. This is how I came to be a young earth creationist. I was challenged by some of the things that I was seeing on the internet. There were people with high levels of education saying evolution is not science, it's not scientific, and they were giving arguments for it. And I was dumbfounded by this, because I firmly believed in evolution. And so I started listening carefully and very intently to what they were saying, and what they said seemed to add it up. So I started a campaign of investigation. Well, this scientist, says that this is true, and evolution is not true because of it. So what I did was, okay, let me go investigate that. So I began a campaign of investigation, comparing the claims of the evolutionist camp versus the claims of the creationist camp, and going to the science papers, reading the journals, reading the abstracts, reading their articles on both sides, investigating what it was. If they talk about bacterial flagellum, I got a know what that is because I don't know what the argument is. So I have to go investigate and find out what a bacterial flagellum is. What is DNA recombination? What are these things? And it took a lot of study. I had to learn the stuff that they were talking about before I could decide whether or not who's got the truth about it. And it took me about 5.5 months. And after about 5 months, I said to myself, what am I doing? I've proven to myself evolution is not true and creation is, in fact, 1,000 times over. I give up. And I became terribly depressed because I realized that I had had wool pulled over my eyes all my life. And here I'm in my early 40s, mid 40s, and I've been believing a lie all my life. And it made me depressed because all the TV shows that I'd watched on TV that I thought were so awesome, National Geographic, Smithsonian TV, everything that I had been told and believed about evolution in millions of years and all was just wiped off the table. And it's like somebody just reached into me and pulled out a chunk of my life and threw it away. And that made me terribly depressed. After about 2 weeks of depression, I became angry about it because I realized that there's people with really high levels of education in this world who are pulling the wool over millions of people's eyes with lies. And it made me angry. And I'm still angry about it. But I learned to quell the anger and replace that with trying to do something about it. So that's really where I came from.
Well, let's see if we can't maybe get a chunk of that life back for you tonight. Maybe tonight is the night that you can be convinced that there is more to evolution than just hearsay. And I tell you what, Esteban, why don't you tell us what the strongest case for evolution is?
Well, I have obviously a lot of different ways I could approach that, but first I'd like to bring up a gene called the MYH16. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. It's a gene that is present in all mammals, but in primates it specializes in the encoding or in the it is specialized gene responsible for encoding a protein called myosin, which is responsible for the strength of the jaw muscles and our ability to bite. But in humans, we have the gene, but it is inactive. And there are many such cases in which we have genes that only a particular group, such as like primates or mammals, they all have this in common, but that they share with no other creature. And there's just no reason for us to have the same gene as all other primates and for it to be inactive under the light of creation. There would be no purpose for a creator to put that gene there and purposely make it inactive, if we didn't come from, the same ilk.
All right, so just so we can clarify it for the outside people, they may not know what the I'm assuming the MYH2 gene is. So you're saying because we have this very specific protein encoding gene, which this is a gene that there's on the sheath of a neuron. There's this protein on it, right? And that protein, this gene will produce that protein, correct? The mylar coating.
Yeah.
And so you're saying that because we have this gene specifically in us and other pretty much obviously all animals have this. You're saying that it's because it's inactive?
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's for primates. It specializes in the temporalis and masseter muscles of the jaw, and it is responsible for making the most large and powerful. And we have this gene, not like reptiles and amphibians don't have this. It's just a mammal thing, but in primates, it's specialized for that. And it's only found in those muscle groups, which obviously it's found in for us because we're primates. But for us, it's inactive. And the fact that it is inactive is just, like, why would Why would that be unless evolution? You know, there was a mutation.
Okay, so that's your strongest argument for evolution, is a epigenetically recessive gene? I can give you a reason why I believe that we might have this gene. I'm not familiar with that particular gene, but I can, right off the top of my head, come up with an argument that may be true. Don't know, because I haven't actually investigated this gene. But just off the top of my head, I can see why we might have that gene and it be turned off. You know that the fossil record shows that living things were able to produce massive sized varieties of themselves in the past. The fossil record is rife with gigantic examples like camels, twice the size of modern camels, kangaroos that were over 6 feet tall, sloths that weigh 2,000 pounds, dragonflies with a 2-inch wingspan, 7-foot centipedes, sea scorpions that were 6 feet tall instead of 2 feet tall. The list goes on and on. Elk were vastly bigger than they are today. And the list goes on and on and on. They call these megafauna, right? So megafauna don't exist anymore. These are the same types of living things. We call them kinds, if you want. You can call them family, whatever, that exist on this planet today, but there are no massive sized varieties anymore. And I believe that the reason that there are no massive sized varieties anymore is because the atmosphere of the Earth has been dramatically changed by the Noahic flood. And that caused a tremendous change to the atmosphere, a loss of atmospheric pressure and oxygen content that made it impossible for organisms to produce massive sized varieties of themselves. And for example, in the fossil record, there's peach pit. I've seen fossil peach pit. The peach pit is as big as almost the size of well, bigger than not as big as a baseball, but a lot bigger than a golf ball. And that would be one massive peach. I'm talking about a peach as big around as a supersized roll of toilet paper. A massive peach, right? So it wasn't just animals, it was plants too. And so if creatures can't produce massive sized varieties of themselves anymore, then it's logical also that man also got smaller. And so if man gets smaller, maybe we don't need this gene anymore, because we don't need jaws as big and strong as we are. And a genetic response to the change in environment was to epigenetically turn off that gene. You know, human beings have, we have dental problems today. We've got wisdom teeth, right? Our teeth don't actually fit in our jaws anymore. Our jaws were much bigger in the past, and that's why we have teeth that come up behind our molars, because they should have been coming up and we had a bigger jaw. But if mankind has shrunk, this would explain the dental problems that humans have with these teeth, right? The undeveloped teeth. So it's very possible that man, like other varieties of living things that God created, now responded to this changed environment by being smaller and not being massive in size anymore. And if that were true, if this gene is related to making jaw muscles massive and strong when we don't need that, it could be an example of response to the environment, just like a cavefish turning off the genes that express eyes. So I don't know that that's the answer, but that just comes to mind as a very possible explanation for why this gene may exist in humans, but be turned off epigenetically.
Well, I think this. He was trying to say this gene had to do with neurons. I think you need to check the gene out, because this gene is for actins, right? I mean, this is when you have these basically motor proteins, and they cause molecular transport. So these myosines are these types of actin-based motor transport. So this gene specifically codes for that. So I'm not sure what you meant by neurons on that.
So wait, motor transport? Are you talking about
motor transport? Yeah,
motor transport molecules that
yes,
transport
for transporting
energy across microtubules?
Yes, yeah.
Kinesin
so up and down
molecules?
the microtubule.
You mean
it'll code
molecules?
Kinesin and actin. Yeah, they both do transport.
Okay.
If I remember correctly. Right?
Well, I don't see why that couldn't be turned off. Epigenetically, organisms seem to be able to adapt to their environment in some pretty profound ways, like turn off their eyeballs, you know. So I don't see that as a
gene that's
problem
not
for
transcribed
creation
any longer, right? I
don't see losing
turned
anything
off,
as a
it's not
problem for
transcribed.
creation. I'm sorry, we're having a lag issue here. I hear your voice breaking up. It might be me?
Yeah, because you're on Skype. Yeah, well, you're on Skype and we're on vMix, so there's going to be a little bit of delay. I'm just trying to get Aposteriori Unum's argument down so everybody's on the same page. Because I'm not sure if he's arguing that it's just not an express gene, or that it has a similarity between all humans or all hominidae. I'm not specifically understanding what this gene is being argued for. That's all. And I want the outside audience to kind of get on the same page with everybody. Because if you're talking about epigenetics is just going to be a regulatory thing. It's just going to say that this gene is expressed or not expressed, right? It's going to be transcribed or not transcribed.
Well, that's why cavefish don't have eyes, because they have epigenetically turned off the genes, right, that make eyes.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah, because they didn't need that anymore.
I don't see
So the energy was going
anything
somewhere
as
else.
an argument against creation in any way. Evolution portends to explain the arrival of features, not the loss of them. Losing them doesn't make a case against creation. Evolution has to show how the feature comes into existence. That's the real issue, not losing.
Hey, Aposteriori, you want to address that?
Of bringing that up in the first place is not necessarily the size or the fact that we lost a gene here or that it is inactive currently. It's more that it is a gene that is shared amongst a larger group, and that the fact that it's turned and it's only part of this group. It's not like it's every living thing and then just somewhere down the line. It's like a specific group that uses the gene for a particular purpose. And I'm being more general because there's a lot more of this. That was just one specific case. That we have this gene and we have no reason to have it other than that we got it from a common ancestor.
I would disagree. I don't believe that demonstrates we got it from a common ancestor. I believe it's the best that I can see out of this is that if it's not used anymore, it might get turned off, and that's useful to the organism in some cases. I don't see that how that. I understand that you might believe that, as an evolutionist, you believe genetic similarities in all cases pretty much evidence of common ancestry. I disagree with that assumption about phylogenetics, but I don't see losing. Again, all I can say is I don't see losing something being turned off, especially if it's in response to the environment, since we've seen so many cases. We know so many cases where organisms are able to respond to the environment by turning genes off. So that doesn't explain the arrival of the cavefish. Just might explain why he doesn't have eyes anymore. So I don't see that as an argument for evolution or any kind of case against creation in any way. Explaining the arrival of genes, now that would be a problem for evolution.
Isn't the fact that a gene is being turned off evidence for a variation between species?
I don't think that it demonstrates in any way that they're common ancestry. I think it just demonstrates that the design is ingenious and can turn off genes in order to respond to the environment like that. It doesn't make sense to me that if evolution were true, that without a designer involved, that a cavefish could turn off the genes to make its eyes, to protect itself from having these injuries that could cause, fatal injury to the eye. Just get rid of the eyes by turning them off. To me, that's just profound. There's got to be some super intelligence involved in order for the organism to shut off an entire feature like that it's not needed. If evolution were true, how could evolution explain the programming involved in turning genes on and off that are useless like that to the organism? I see that as a design feature, profound evidence of intelligent design.
Well,
maybe I can ask him this question, and you can kind of weigh in on it, Aposteriori. Your mic is really low, by the way. If you can either get closer to it.
Mine?
Yeah.
No. Okay, there we go.
Oh.
Let me try to direct this because I don't think this is kind of going in the same direction with you two, and people are kind of noticing. So, Nephi, I'm going to ask you a question, and then we can ask it to him and see if there's a meeting of the minds here on the cavefish. if the cavefish are having mutations and the mutations are being selected for because they do not need the eyes anymore, and the eyes waste energy, and that energy can be utilized other places more efficiently, whether the chances of that fish being having a higher survival, is that not what evolution would predict?
Well, you can work that into the evolution theory, but you don't explain the arrival of the eyes with evolution. I mean, I know that the evolutionist scenario, light sensitive cells, and they became cupped, and then eventually a membrane and all that. It doesn't work for me, but I don't see that as an argument against creation. Adaptation is expected if organisms are ingeniously designed. I don't see why blind, undirected, unguided natural selection and random genetic mutation would be capable of designing a system that can turn off specific entire sets of genes. Now, you wouldn't have to turn off just this one gene. It's not like there's one gene that makes an eyeball. There's numerous genes that all have to be expressed in order to get an eyeball. The system has to know which genes to turn off, and it gets them all. Now, that's ingenious. I mean, what if they left behind, just some? How does that even work? See, I just don't see blind, undirected, unintelligent processes as being sophisticated enough to do such a thing. So I would ask a question myself. If evolution were true, why is there a DNA repair mechanism? If mutation is the stuff of evolution, and if random genetic mutations being selected for by natural selection is the process which builds genomes and develops new genes and codes for new functional features and astonishing complexity, and since mutations are the thing that supposedly do this, according to what the evolutionists believe, why in the world wouldn't evolution why would it develop? How is it logical to believe that evolution would develop a system designed to prevent mutations and protect the integrity of the DNA molecule from random change? That seems counterintuitive to me. I don't see how that's rational. Proofreading system. Why is it logical to believe evolution would develop that?
All right, Esteban, so the same question to you about the blind fish. Was that something that we'd expect from evolution? And then if you want to go into the repair mechanisms in the DNA, that's fine too.
Well, that's absolutely something that we would predict in light of evolution. Any kind of adaptation. I mean, you say that adaptation can happen under intelligent design. That's definitely true, but if it's so intelligently designed, why not just create it perfectly right off the bat? But yeah, the cave fish without the eyes, or would they have the eyes, but they're no longer functional. That is absolutely consistent with what evolution says. I'd like to say, I mean, I don't know if you mind if I bring it back for a few minutes and mention something that was mentioned a while back.
Well,
Sure.
I don't, but I wonder if you could also respond to my question about why is it rational to believe that random mutation, being the stuff that designs everything about a creature, would develop a proofreading error correction system to maintain the integrity of the molecule against random change. I would appreciate a response to that.
It didn't design anything. I think that's a malformed question.
Well, I don't know why you consider it malformed. Maybe try to make it as succinct as I can. Surely you understand what I'm asking, right? You seem pretty intelligent. If evolution has developed everything by random mutations selected for by nature, right? Then why would random undirected mutations develop a proofreading system designed to maintain the integrity of the DNA molecule against random change? A system to prevent the very process that supposedly developed and designed everything about living things. You understand my question?
Yeah. I don't think the why is the important part, but anyway, it's not a perfect process. It doesn't perfectly prevent mutations from happening. Otherwise,
That's true. Yeah.
So it's not like a thing where it's like a spell checker and it just makes sure everything's copied perfectly. In fact, if that were the case, then evolution would be looking really bad.
Well, if the process
what Nephi said-
itself is imperfect, wouldn't that be, to me, I see that as reason to believe that it was a good design in the beginning. It's going downhill because of random mutation. A system designed to maintain the integrity of the DNA molecule itself has been damaged now, and it's not perfect anymore. But being imperfect or not doesn't explain why it would exist. I don't think you haven't actually answered the question as to why, or why it's rational to believe that evolution would design a system designed to prevent evolution.
All right. Well, let me. Since this is kind of an open forum, this was not really a plan between you guys. If I can step in here and maybe address this for you, Nephi, because I don't know if he's familiar with that particular part of genetics. So let's not hold that against him. You're talking about the error correction.
I can explain it simply to him. I mean.
Well, let me explain it because I think I can explain it better. Actually, there are multiple different ways that DNA can be make sure that it's when DNA makes more DNA, right? When it actually has the replication of DNA, right? There's errors that creep in. There's mutations. There's called SNPs. There's single nucleotide polymorphisms that will make one nucleotide into something else, right? And there's different ways these are corrected. So you try to reduce the number of errors down to, I think it's 10 to the negative 6 with one error correction, 10 to the negative 8th with another error correction, and 10 to the negative 9th with another type of error correction. So with all these error corrections, we end up with few unique mutations that our parents do not have. Those unique mutations will express themselves phenotypically, which means that, as you said, like the outside features, right? Something that nature can act upon, natural selection can select for. This is what evolution would predict. So if you have these blind fish where you have a mutation where the eyes are not working better, but something else is working better, where they're more adapted to their environment, so they're going to survive more to procreate, that is exactly why we would predict that if you have a mutation that allows for one thing to be turned off, it gives you a benefit somewhere else, because now that ATP that you're being produced can be utilized for something else. And
you've moved the goalpost, Steve. You're off on something else altogether. And all you're doing is describing what mutations do according to your belief in evolution. You haven't answered the question as why it's logical to believe that the main DNA, that random mutations would design an error correction system. That's the question. You actually haven't addressed it.
If it confers a benefit, if there's something beneficial to it, then that is what nature will select for. In this case, they don't need the energy any longer for the eyes because they're in caves, they're blind. The fish that had the mutations that had less eyesight and it was better utilized somewhere else, those genes are passed on. So the error correction thing is the same thing. It's just the way the proteins will come in and it'll detect a problem. Let's say you have a dimer, what's called a pyrimidine dimer, where you have instead of the nucleotides going like this, they basically go like this in the DNA. So you can cause them from radiation. Ultraviolet radiation causes these types of lesions. And you can't get the DNA to be replicated. It has a problem with that because it basically, it causes cancer, what it is. It's carcinogenic. But there are ways of fixing these things, right? There's little splice-ons will go in and it'll cut it out and then put what it thinks to be the correct nucleotide in. Doesn't always get it right, but most of the time it does. And so there's even a minute problem with that error correction. But as you were saying, Esteban, this system is not perfect, right? So if there was a intelligent designer, why did he not have a perfect error correction system? Why did he make it so that there are errors that creep in? Because those errors are what make life possible. Without those errors, we would not exist.
But Steve, you're not actually answering the question. You're dancing all around it. You've gone off onto what you believe. You're doing what I say evolutionists love to do, and they often think that describing something is giving an answer to a question, and it's not. So I mean, I can do. Somebody could again example. Somebody could ask me, how did that car come into being? And I can say, well, cars are useful for driving, and they get us to various places, and we can put luggage in the back seat, and we can. It takes gasoline to run a car. You're not answering the question. You're just telling me what cars do. See, the question I asked was, why would evolution design a system that would protect the integrity of the DNA molecule against random change, if random change is the mechanism that designed the system.
Natural
That's
selection.
what you actually
Go
haven't
ahead.
addressed the question.
Your question is, why would this happen? You do believe in variation between species and natural selection as a force for pushing this variation between species, right? Or at least amongst a species.
Life does adapt, and you, as you said rightly a
Okay,
little
that
while
is
ago,
okay.
that could be explained by
That
creationism as well as
answers your
evolution.
question. That answers your question. That's why it would happen.
Turning things off doesn't explain the existence of a mechanism designed to protect the DNA against random change. If random change designed the system, that doesn't actually address the question. I know it's a tough question. It's
Not
tough,
really.
but I'm not getting a direct answer to the question. We're talking about all kinds of things, but not the question.
I think they are direct answers, though. Not really. I mean, these are all direct answers. I mean, we're trying to explain how natural selection works, why it will
That is
have.
natural selection.
If the organism is better suited for its environment, it has a better chance to procreate. All evolution is based upon is life and death. Either you reproduce or you don't reproduce, right?
But
That's
natural
it.
selection
That's
just
really what it
passes
boils
on
down
what
to.
already exists, right, Steve? It doesn't generate things. It only passes
It does
on
do. No, it does
change.
generate new things. It
It passes
absolutely.
on
Mutations
change that's
will make new
already
things.
occurred, right?
No, they're called alleles. They call the whole principle behind evolution is a change of allelic frequency in a given population over time, right? So there's a new variation of that gene. That's called an allele. That is new. This is
well,
why
an allele is
scared
new.
you don't
I
answer
don't
the
know why
question.
alleles would be new, but Steve,
Because they're not
natural
old.
selection doesn't create things; it passes on what already exists, right? Change has to occur, and then the change passed on by natural selection.
Mutations
Natural
change
selection doesn't generate it,
based upon
No,
mutations.
mutations.
right? So why would mutation, random change to DNA, design a system to protect the DNA molecule from random change? But we can move to something else if you don't have a direct answer. It's all right with me.
That is a direct answer. I mean, this is about as direct as you get. This is biology 101.
What is a direct answer? I haven't heard a direct answer.
Because natural selection occurs. That's why.
Yeah, exactly.
Because if you
I agree natural selection occurs. That's not an explanation as to why or even how this would happen.
That is
Just saying because natural selection doesn't actually answer the question.
That has a high propensity to have mutations whenever they procreate versus one that has a slightly lower propensity to have these mutations to procreate, then there is a selection pressure there that for the one that has the fewest mutations, especially negative mutations, which are in fact exceeding rare. And so natural selection is what is driving that mechanism to exist.
Naturally, you said negative mutations are extremely rare. I don't know where you get that idea. That seems bizarre to me. But all you're doing is describing the fact that negative mutations are selected out by natural selection. That's not actually answering the question.
And positive mutations are selected for.
That doesn't explain how natural selection would design a DNA proofreading system or why it would design it for the purpose of protecting itself against its own mechanism.
Of course it does. I mean,
no, I'm afraid, Steve, you haven't actually.
If something is beneficial, it's selected for. If something is negative, it's selected out. I mean,
well, that's true, but that still doesn't answer the question.
It may be beneficial to have two mutations.
Really does.
You're saying because it would be beneficial to have it, thus it develops somehow, right?
If you have a mutation that confers to you an advantage in your environment, and that selective pressure they're going to be forcing some kind of way of going after your phenotype, right? Because the phenotype is what's being basically selected for. Because the environment doesn't act directly on the genome, right? It acts on the phenotype, which is an expression from the genotype. So if the mutation has a neutral factor that it doesn't have any change in your phenotype, then natural selection cannot act upon it one way or another. Genetic drift can, but not natural selection. If you have a positive feature, if something that is beneficial for you to survive, that is, for example, let's say you have a gene that says you sweat more, okay, and you're living in a hot climate, that might be beneficial. right? So that might give you a better chance to survive. That's going to be selected for.
Yeah, I hear what
Or
you're
it could be
saying, Steve, but to
detrimental
be
if
honest
you
with you, there
dehydrate.
just
You
simply
know, either
isn't
way,
an
just give an
answer in
example.
amongst evolutionists as to why evolution would design a system to maintain the integrity of the DNA if
Because it's
changing the
beneficial to do so.
integrity of the DNA is the mechanism of evolution. There simply is no answer that evolutionists can offer for why this would be true, but it exists. But the
Something like we
creationists
gave.
can answer it, especially since the system operates algorithmically, and algorithms are non-physical fundamental entities produced only by intelligence. And so you can't even explain the algorithmic operation of DNA repair, much less with evolution, because algorithms come only from an intelligence. They're designed. So,
Esteban, what about you? What do you think?
Where you get that? What do I think? Well, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I've already
we
explained
did-
it. I explained it so easily that a child could understand it. So, I mean, if he's just not accepting as an answer, what are you going to do?
well, you didn't
But
actually
you want to
address
get
it directly. You just said that if it was beneficial, the organism would keep it and pass it on. Well, nobody doubts natural selection, but that doesn't explain why. It doesn't answer why. It's a logical problem. You see, it's not logical that evolution would produce a system that operates against its own mechanism. See, that's the thing. There just isn't any answer an evolutionist can give for this question.
Well, we can get back to that at some other time or something. But I do believe we gave a pretty good answer. Steve probably more clearly than I did because I'm still a little aggravated. But you said evolution is not science. I heard you say that in the very beginning.
That's right.
And I'm just curious what your definition of science is, if you don't call it.
Well, I don't have a definition for it, but it's been defined. Science is a mechanism is a method of investigating something to discover the cause of a phenomenon. Isn't that right? It's a process of investigation to discover what's the cause of something. That's what science is.
Right.
You have X and you want to know how X came to be or what X does. So you investigate and to discover what the cause of that is. That's what science is. I didn't define even science. It's been defined a long time ago. I agree completely with what the definition of science is. I don't believe evolution is science. It's philosophy, though. It's a massive package of philosophical constructs.
Sure, I'm not going to disagree with that. I actually agree with that.
Yeah, I agree with your definition of what science is, but don't know why do you say evolution does not fall under that?
Well, because if I investigate all the claims of evolution, they prove to not be science, but something that somebody believes to be true, but it's not demonstrable. It's not demonstrable. For example, I just give you a beautiful case, and this is probably one of the most obvious cases, is that evolutionists have been saying since scientists discovered what DNA was, since it was realized in the early 20th century that DNA was a package of information that develops an organism. It's the recipe for the design of all the features of an organism, right? That's what scientists discovered in the early 20th century. And they began mutating it. Then Haldane was probably the granddaddy of all evolution mutation experiments, and ever since then, so it's been close to 90 years that it has been almost 100, in fact, years that scientists have been experimenting with mutations in all kinds of creatures. In the early years, they experimented with mutating cats and monkeys and frogs, everything they could imagine. They irradiated the crap out of living things to see what the effects would be. And so they've been doing this for 100 years. And in every major university, every state university, Mississippi State University, Montana State University, University of Pennsylvania, all over across this country, tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, they'll be conducting random genetic mutation experiments in virtually every major university in the world. So they've been doing this for 90 years, right? And what they've discovered is mutations cause weakness, deformities, and death, and disease. But they don't produce anything novel. They add nothing incrementally to the structural design of an organism. In other words, they don't develop or build anything in the design. either at the cellular level or at the macro level of the organism in their body plan. They don't develop new things.
Well, that's actually demonstrably
and
false.
but so here
That's
we've got
actually really
years of
demonstrably
scientific study of mutation, and the evolutionists have been saying all this time that mutations do that very thing. But so it's their belief that that happens against 90 years of science that demonstrates it doesn't. And it's a belief they have in their head, but it's not science. See, science would has shown us for almost a century, that mutations do not design functional new anatomical structures even at the cellular level. So,
Well,
but
that's
evolutionists
just false.
claim that they do.
But definitely, that's just outright false. I mean, that's just not even, that's wronger than wrong than wrong. We know that these things produce novel things. Let me finish. We've seen these things produce novel things. We've seen, there was somebody in our community that had a new novel blood vessel that was due to a mutation, which is a structure. It is a new novel structure that they would have died by when they had a heart attack had they not had this extra blood vessel. It was selected for. This person survived, and he was able to be going on to reproduce. Now, hang on. ATP synthase is a novel structure. It is produced incrementally through prior iterations of smaller proteins, smaller enzymes, right? So the enzyme ATP, which you're quite familiar with, we can see each part of that enzyme, where it came from, what protein encoded for it, and we can see it through the phylogenetic record. So you're saying that these things are not novel, not new. Well, yes, they are. Now, are you suggesting that evolution would think that something would come ex nihilo, poof, magic, you have an eye come out of nowhere? Because I don't think that even you would suggest that. These things are incremental changes because of changes in the genome due to mutations. Simple as that. They are novel because they didn't have them before. They have them now, and then they get better reiterations of it. And each cycle, reproductive cycle, will select for things that are more beneficial to that species, or else the species dies out. That's why you have extinctions. Or one of the reasons.
Okay, so Steve, two things about what you've just said. Firstly, it's hard for me to understand. I hear this all the time from evolutionists like yourself. Hard for me to understand why an evolutionist doesn't see the problem with what you just said. For example,
because
a
they
new blood
understand
vessel appears in the body of a human being. But the problem there, Steve, is they already have blood vessels. That's not a novel feature for an organism. It's
they didn't have them at one time.
So
blood
evolution
came about
because of nothing about creation. Oh, please let me respond. So nothing about creation dictates that can't happen. And evolution, by adding more of the same that the organism already has, does not explain the arrival of novel features. Okay. So secondly, that doesn't answer the question, and that doesn't provide an argument. And the second thing you said is the ATP synthase evolved by incrementally, and because we have genes that develop it as the cell. Well, we don't see that. ATP synthase is you're simply assuming that the ATP synthase machine evolved. We don't have any observational evidence that it evolved.
That's not an assumption. That is
the organism has the genes that make the ATP synthase machinery. That's all we know. You assume that it evolved, and that's not science.
That's an incorrect statement. You're literally saying our conclusions based upon the observation of the data. We can actually go back and find each protein, that the gene that encodes these things, and you're saying that is an assumption. That's not an assumption. That's called a conclusion based upon the observable evidence.
So other creatures have the same genes. That's not evidence.
Well, no, ATPs can be quite different. There's FTPases, there's VFTPases, there's many different types of these ATP synthesis going on. So you're not one size fits all. But in humans, right, we understand how ATP synthase works, and we can see where it came from prior iterations.
I think you see it in your imagination. It doesn't bother me a bit that I could give you a whole bunch of pieces of bent metal or differently shaped metal, nuts and bolts, and you could make different kinds of things out of them. So having a gene
they're called atoms.
in a human being, having a gene that produces one component of ATP synthase in a human being in another species doesn't provide an argument to me that this somehow evolved.
Right,
it simply means we share components. That's all.
We're getting something here. But let me ask you this. This is what Nephilim's trying to say. Hey, we have atoms, but how do we magically get molecules? Where do the molecules come from? Oh, the atoms build up and they formed molecules. He's basically
that's not what I'm
saying
saying.
you can't. Well, hang on, you can't create new things. Well, the molecule is a new thing from the old things, and that's how evolution works. It's not that complicated. Atoms build molecules. Molecules will make bigger things, and you have amino acids that'll come together. You have proteins and what's called peptides and ligmapeptides and these long strains of amino acids, and then you have DNA, which is nucleotides that are built up. It's all chemistry. It's just
It hasn't been observed that these genes come into being from non-genes and produce ATP
Yeah, they do.
synthase. Because the
they're
different
called de novo
species
genes.
possess some of the same genes that produce ATP synthase in their cells is not, to me, evidence that it evolved. You have to assume that it evolved. Genetic similarity
Yeah,
doesn't prove
wrong.
evolution.
So because DNA was always there, any difference in DNA, that's not like a new thing. I'm not sure where you're going with that. Like, well, you want a mutation to create something that is like completely different than the body that it came from. Like,
Well, that's what evolution contends, isn't it? That fish begat over multiple generations creatures that it changed over time until eventually you have the land-dwelling reptile, right? That's what evolutionists believe, right?
well, yeah, but I don't see what that has to do with what you were just talking about.
Well, I don't either. You're the one who mentioned it, not me. I didn't bring up that, you know, that one type of living thing begets a different type over time. You mentioned that.
No. The mutations. You're saying that that's not a new thing. Like that the mutation happened and blood vessels, for example, we already have blood vessels. So this other type of blood vessel or whatever it happens to be, you know, that's already a thing that exists. So that's not new information. I mean, what you require to call it new information? Does it need to be made out of plastic or?
I'm glad you asked that question.
You know,
The answer is this. Getting a new blood vessel that is not normally found in human anatomy doesn't move the organism, a human being, towards becoming some other type of living thing. Therefore, it doesn't support evolution theory. It's simply a mutation that causes a change in the anatomy by reproducing something that already exists. The creature already has the genetic information to produce blood vessels. So you just get an extra one, just like a human being can be born with an extra arm or two mouths, for that matter. That doesn't move the organism towards becoming some other type of living thing. It's a deformed creature, and these things are selected out by natural selection. Adding
people with
blood vessels
an extra arm.
is adding what already exists, expressing the same information that produces blood vessels elsewhere to put one in a different location in the body plan. That's not moving the organism towards being something other than a human being in any way.
There are people with another arm. I wish I was that person.
Yeah. And legs and heads and I don't know. Anyways,
I could use another arm.
Well, at least another hand, sure. We all could use a helping hand every now and then. Dr. Gart, you there?
Yes, I am. Hello.
Hello. I bet you might have things to add on
You hear
this.
me?
Yes, sir.
Do I have something to add? Yeah, I have.
Yeah, I'm sure
I
you
have
do.
a few things to add.
Let's just say before you start, Dr. Gart, Nephilim, Dr. Gart, I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he is also a Christian. So he is you two do share that. So we're not trying to bring in another atheist evolutionist here to try to thwart you.
Spectrum here. We got Christian, atheist, atheist, agnostic. So take your pick. We like to have a variety here. Yeah.
Oh, I love talking about evolution with Christians who believe it. I like showing them that their belief is not only not true, but that it's unbiblical as well.
Well, he's a biochemist, so I would listen to what he has to say. Go ahead, Dr. Gart.
Well, I tuned in a little late. I had some other things to do, but I was interested to hear what was happening. And I tuned in and I heard some very strange comments being made by, is it Nephilim? I'm not sure.
Yes, nice to meet you, sir. My name is Evan.
Nice
you
to
can
meet
call
you.
me Evan if you like.
Evan, that's better. Okay, I like that. And you can call me Cy.
Okay, great, Cy.
Now, let me just say that to get right off the bat, as you probably already realized, I am a scientist. I grew up as an atheist, but I became a Christian, and I'm a very devout Christian. But
Glad to hear that.
I hold to the theory of evolution because I believe that we hear the word of God from two books, the Bible and the book of nature, which is we determine from science. And I think, as St. Augustine said, that it is a big mistake when we act foolishly with respect to scientific truth and try to proclaim that. I'm paraphrasing him, obviously, not word for word, and try to proclaim that to the non-believers, because then we look foolish. So I have studied evolution. I've studied biology. I don't mean by reading online. I mean, I have a PhD in it, and I've done the experiments you've talked about. I heard you mentioning people who do mutations in the lab. That's me. I've done a lot. I've produced a lot of mutations in the laboratory, in cells, in bacteria, in all kinds of cells. And I know a lot about how DNA works and what DNA is and how it mutates. And you said a number of things that are simply not true. And by that, I mean that they have been proven to be not true. One of them is that mutations are not able to produce anything new, and that's not true. We don't produce, a lot of what you said about what scientists do in laboratories is just not correct. What we do is we look at the effects of mutations, and what we find is that if you produce mutations in a population of cells, the majority will be harmful and will kill those cells, but a few will be beneficial, and because of natural selection, they will survive and they will overcome whatever threat the cells are facing and become stronger and take over. In this case, if it's a bacterial cell, they'll take over the dish. But the same thing also happens with animals. You know, all animals go through periods of extreme stress, and sometimes they go extinct. A whole species can go extinct. But if among that population of animals, let's say the temperature gets colder, and most of the animals will die from they're not able to handle the cold. But if this variation, and this variation is caused by mutations that may have occurred over thousands of years previously that had no real effect, but let's say one of those mutations produced longer hair, which protects that animal from the cold, that particular animal with that particular mutation may survive. And if enough of those animals in that population have that mutation, because they had inherited it from, when it originally arose, then that small population of those animals will live, and they will be able to reproduce, and you have a change in the phenotype, the characteristics of that small group of animals. And so the definition of evolution, the scientific definition of evolution, is a change in allele frequency in a population. And the allele frequency is it means which particular types of the genes, in other words, a gene for longer hair compared to the gene for regular hair. That's an allele change. And when the allele proportion in the population rises, so more proportion of the animals have longer hair, that's what we call evolution. That's the definition of evolution. So it's not very mystical or difficult to understand. It's simply the process of variation caused by various mutations, but not only the simple mutations, all kinds of changes in the DNA. And that variation is then acted on by the environment to produce natural selection, as Steve was saying before, so that the most fit, the better adapted individuals survive. And the result of that is a change in the genetics of the whole population eventually. And that's what we see in nature. We can see it in the laboratory. We can see it in real life, in actual animals in the field. It's been observed in fish. It's been observed in insects. It's been observed in birds. It's been observed in many places. And we know that that happens. And in fact, most creationist scientists that I know agree. They call it microevolution. Okay? In other words, a population gets better. It gets better adapted to its environment. So let me stop here and see what you want to say about that, because I'm assuming that you also would agree that microevolution is a real thing.
Well, I disagree with the term microevolution. I think it's there's a certain amount of hegemony built into it. I disapprove of the use of that word, but we're stuck with it, kind of. But here's the things that you said. You said the majority you acknowledged, and I'm so glad you did, because there's so many atheists who believe in evolution who would argue with you about this. I hear it all the time. They'll say the majority of mutations are not negative, and that's simply not true. That's a
No,
myth.
you're right. That's
and
not
I'm glad
true.
that you
You're right.
acknowledged that the majority
Yeah, I don't know a
are
lot of people
negative.
that say that though.
But
That's kind of
but
strong.
nobody says
People
that,
recognize that mutation
Evan.
is neutral for the
wait,
most part.
that is, well, no, that's what you said. Maybe you misspoke. Go back and read
No,
it.
no,
didn't.
I said that. I did say that.
Okay.
But what I'm
Okay.
saying is that I have never heard anyone say,
Okay.
atheist or whatever, anybody who understands evolution has never said that the majority of mutations are either beneficial or neutral. The majority, well, the majority may be neutral, but they're either neutral or harmful. That's well
Okay, so-
accepted.
Yeah, I strongly
everyone.
disagree with that. I hear it all the time. I've heard it from PhDs. I hear it from lay people all the time.
I find that to be.
There are
I find that
plenty
to be
of
questionable.
evolutionists who. Hold on,
I'm a
please let me
I'm a
respond.
lay person, and
There are
even I
plenty
know
of
this.
evolutionists who disagree with that, and so I'm glad you put that out.
Okay.
But you said that
All right.
the majority are negative, but they're overcome by the beneficial ones. To me, that sounds like a monster-sized package of faith right there. I just can't imagine
No.
the evolution.
Let me give you an example.
Let me finish
Go
my
ahead.
response.
Go ahead.
So I think that's a monster-sized package of faith. I don't think it's demonstrable scientifically, and so, but the beneficial ones, we don't know of any beneficial mutations that add novel features to the body plans of living things. So we don't see the mechanism expressing itself. Now, you mentioned longer hair. I don't see how anybody can use an argument of longer hair as evidence of evolution. Surely, if evolution were true, longer hair would be something that would happen, perhaps, for certain species, shorter hair or longer hair. And this could be, you would see lots of examples of different things like that, a given feature being expressed more or less in response to the environment. Sure, that's natural selection. But the problem with that is that that's not evidence of evolution, because longer hair is still hair. The organism still has hair follicles. They still have the proteins in the hair follicles that are designed to rebuild the skin when it gets an abrasion or a cut. The hair follicles actually play a greater role, I'm sure you're aware of that, than just making hair. They actually contain specialized cells that help the skin regrow when it gets damaged by abrasion or cut. So,
Evan, let me before we get too far afield, I want to go back and
let me respond to all that you said, please. So I don't see longer hair as evidence of evolution. Evolution portends to explain the arrival of new features in body plans by changing existing ones so they have new biomechanical functions, or creating brand new ones ex nihilo in increments, in thousands of increments, right? Okay, so I don't see longer hair as evidence of evolution to support the theory. And then lastly, you said changes to allele frequency. Well, that's a true mechanism. That does happen. The problem, though, is that changing allele frequencies in a species over time simply gets more and more genes turned off epigenetically. They get turned off. That's how you end up with a Chihuahua. From the dog kind, is a defunct organism that has all kinds of health problems. Because you're turning off genes. So changing allele frequencies, whether by natural selection in the environment or by selective breeding, is a mechanism for continually turning off genetic information. But evolution would require continuous input of new genetic information. So now I wanted to ask you this.
Well, hold on 1 second, Neffy. Hold on 1 second, Neffy.
We're running out of time, so we got to bring our close in a few. So chill out.
We have another show. We have another show following this, so we need to be out of here in 8 minutes. So I'm gonna have to kind of curtail the.
Okay. Well, I would just like to make one statement to him for asking if he consider.
Hold on, Neffy.
You got it out there. We have to let. We have to let.
Hold on.
Segart respond here. Okay, if not, you're going to talk the next 8 minutes. Go ahead, Segart.
Okay. Let me respond. If I don't have time to do it all, I definitely want to respond to your point about negative mutations being overcome by a few positive ones. You have to imagine the following experiment, and this is an experiment that everyone who does biology, at least molecular biology, has done, including myself. You take a population of cells, let's say you have 1 million bacteria, 1 million bacteria, okay? And you add a poison to the dish, which kills the cells. Every single one of those cells dies, okay? So far, we're all right? 0 survivors. Now we do an experiment where before we add the poison, we add a different chemical which causes a high mutation rate. So let's say 10% of those 1 million cells are mutated. That's 100,000 cells. They're mutated. They have all kinds of mutations. Bad ones, mostly bad ones, and good ones. And let's say 90% of those mutated cells die because they had bad mutations. Okay, so that leaves 10,000 cells that are mutated that are not dead. Now we add the poison, and that poison kills all the unmutated cells, and it kills almost all of those 10,000 alive mutated cells because they have different mutations. They're not negative mutations, but they're either neutral and a few are positive. 2 of those cells, only 2 out of the 10,000, have a particular mutation by chance that allows the cell to overcome the poison through various physiological biochemical mechanisms. I don't get into details, but there are many. Those 2 cells are the only 2 of the original 1 million that don't die. What happens next? They divide. They're fine. They're perfectly happy. They divide in 2. Within 20 minutes, there are 2. In another 20 minutes, there are 8, et cetera, et cetera. They continue to grow. And after a couple of days, you come back to the dish and you see 2 colonies of cells with about 10,000 cells each, all having come from those original 2 survivors with a very, very rare mutation that's positive. What I'm saying is, you don't need more good mutations than bad mutations. All you need is 1. And if you get the 1, you have, let me finish now, I let you finish. If you have 1 good mutation, that is sufficient to allow the entire population to recover. And when it recovers, that entire population of bacteria is now resistant to the poison. And that's why when the doctor says, take this antibiotic for 10 days, you better do it. Because if you don't, the mutations are going to be resistant to that antibiotic, which is the poison. So this is demonstration of why it is that a single good mutation, 1 in 1 million, which is a very low rate, can overcome a large number of negative mutations which don't matter. Okay, that's the first thing.
Aaron.
Now,
Aaron. Oh, sorry.
Well,
I just want to say hello to.
I thought that was a ghost. I thought you had a. Is he really here?
Yeah, that's not just a picture. He's actually really there. That's
exactly.
Not
well, I'm smiling, so I think I probably did okay on that one.
Now, you know, the
I
end
agree with
that
you,
is a bacteria that's weaker than the ones you started with, though.
Hang on, Nephi.
It's much stronger. It's much stronger.
That's
Why is it weaker? It now can overcome that poison.
All right,
makes it
we're gonna have to.
All right, Nephi,
we're gonna have to.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna have to because we are in, like I said, we're in the final moments. But hey, Aaron, welcome to the show.
Hi.
Thanks for joining in.
Yeah,
the people
I'm sorry that it took me so long to get here. I was at a thing where people are like pouring all kinds of really powerful alcohol into me, just trying, to seduce me, because that's how people do.
That's all
and, I'm having a really great first night in fucking Denver, Colorado.
Nice.
But I don't hear Cunt Hovind.
Look, guys,
he'll be here tomorrow
fun.
at.
I guess it's time for me to go if that's what's going to start up. Thanks for inviting me. I enjoyed being here to discuss this with you.
Wait a minute.
Hold on a second.
I can't remember his name.
Remarkably like Nephilim Nicholas.
That's Aaron Ross. You know who Aaron Ross is.
No.
Wait. Did you just ask who your Aaron Ross name is? Did you literally just ask what Aaron Ross' name is?
I don't
What,
recall the
Neffy?
gentleman's name that I was speaking with.
You
before.
don't recall
Oh,
that is,
He-
there
I
can't
think he
be
mentioned
that
it once.
many people that have that kind of speech impediment. That's gotta be Nephilim Dickless, isn't it?
So could I find out the name of the gentleman that I was speaking with?
Esteban or
I
Saigar?
heard it
That
once,
was
and I didn't.
Saigar. Saigar and
Dr. Saigar.
Yeah.
Sai, what was the
Yeah,
last
and
name?
I did not
lag
mean
broke.
I did not mean to
Guard.
impugn on
Oh,
Saigar.
okay. Well, I would enjoy discussing this with you at another time. I hope we can
we should
do
do
it
it some
again.
more.
What,
I agree, 'cause
am
he's
I,
got a lot of other
am I
things to
actually
get back.
listening to the voice of the coward known as Nephilim Dickless?
Okay. So,
Neffy-
Aaron Law,
Neffy-
why,
Neffy-
if I'm a
no,
coward,
Neffy,
why
hold
is
on
it
here.
that I've been
Neffy,
challenging you to a debate?
It is.
Hold on, he's
It
answering him,
is
Steve. Hold on, he's answering him.
Nephilim Dickless. It really is. How
So,
fucking
Aaron Law, why,
I don't
why
want Neffy to run
if I'm so such a
Run.
coward,
You're
how
the
come
guy.
you won't
Hold on,
accept
Steve, hold on,
the
Steve.
challenge to debate
who
with
Hold on,
a
Steve.
structured debate?
You're the guy who has that constant fever dream that I must be afraid of him. You fucking stupid ass troll. I'm so delighted to finally meet you
Well,
where we can
look,
talk
it's been fun, guys. If
one
this
on
is,
one. And you're gonna run
dogs
away
cussing on the
already?
mic. Well, look, let's just go
Yeah, he's
do a
gonna run.
hangout, you and me, right now, and just debate evolution, you and me,
I'll
one
do
on
it
one
in
with the
one
moderator. You
right
want to do that?
now. Nephilim fucking stupid ass Dickless, please join me in the hangout. Please.
Let's do a
Let's
one-on-one
have
debate
fun.
with a moderator right
Since
now. You want to?
Cunt 065 45 20 2017 stupid ass goddamn fraud is too chicken shit to be on this. Please, you Nephilim fucking Dickless, please take his place.
So, Aaron Raw, how about you and me do a one-on-one debate with a moderator right now?
Please,
You want to do that?
please let that happen.
Let's do that. Somebody want to set one up? I'm going
Absolutely.
to do it after
We're right
show
here.
debate.
We do got other things
A
we got to do,
discussion
but we're
on my
already here right
YouTube
now.
channel. You're welcome to join.
No,
Would you like to
no.
join
Hey,
and debate
no, it
the
doesn't work
evolution
that way.
I'm
right
already
after the
here.
show?
He's right
You're
there.
here.
He's right here. Talk to him.
Let's do this.
Well,
Yeah,
the
he's right here.
one-on-one with a
Neffy, you've been
moderator.
begging.
Nobody
You
else
wait,
talked to
Neffy. You were
and me and a
bugging me.
moderator.
Neffy, let me finish for a second. You were bugging me to get a debate with Arn for years. You have been begging for it. Arn has been blowing you off with good reason because wait. Arn has a policy, which I think is a good policy. He will debate people that people prop up for the communities, the best of the best, so he doesn't waste time with anybody else. I understand that.
So Steve,
Nobody
let me
propped you
respond to
up.
what you
Nobody,
just
wait,
said,
let me
okay?
finish.
Right?
As it
Nobody
happens,
propped you up.
I'd be happy to debate him with.
as it happens,
So now you have a chance to.
I've been.
Hold on.
I'm out of town.
See, he's doing it now. All Aaron Raw will do is try to talk over everything you say and constantly do so, and he'll yell at you. And that's not an actual debate. It's not a civil debate. He won't engage in a debate with a moderator. That's all I'm interested in with him.
Sure he will. He's done it before.
So
On this channel, he's done it with a moderator.
so that he can't constantly interrupt and scream and yell over every single thing I say when I try to open my mouth. That's what he has always attempted to do every time I've been in a hangout with him. So if he's not afraid to debate, why shouldn't he engage in a debate with a moderator? What's wrong? What's the deal with that?
I'll moderate.
Absolutely. You're completely correct. Let's continue with that idea.
I will have everybody mute, and Kyle will moderate, and you guys can have at it. How's that, Kyle?
Okay,
is that fair?
nobody else speak, and you have a time.
Yeah, I'll mute. I'm muted.
We'll just say goodbye to we'll say goodbye to everybody. And Dr. Gardner, is always a pleasure to see you. Esteban, we'll see you tomorrow at 8 for Kent Hovind. But thank you both for stopping by.
Oh wait. It is Cunt 065 2017 tomorrow?
Tomorrow.
Yes.
Yeah.
It'll be here tomorrow.
I'm sorry. I thought the fraud was going to waste my time tomorrow. I didn't realize it was going to be tonight.
It was supposed to be here tonight, but it's got moved to tomorrow. So let's take a second and say goodbye to these two. And if you two want to,
because he's so busy lying to the trailer trash that he has duped. I'm sorry to have messed up his schedule, but at least I have Nephilim dickless fucking loser that I can talk to tonight. I'm delighted.
Steve, you're going to moderate, whether you're going to time us
No,
both?
no,
Is
no,
that
no,
what
no. Kyle.
you offered
No,
to
no,
do?
Kyle.
I will,
Kyle,
and we'll have
okay.
we'll do timed rounds, and then we'll meet the other person when the other person's talking, so that.
Do we have any more beer?
No, we don't have here. I can get
Okay.
Oh,
So
no.
thank you, Dr. Clark, and thank you, Esteban, as always. We'll see you
Bye-bye.
I
both
would
soon.
love that. I'm having a really great night, my first night in Denver. The people in Denver have treated me so well. They've bought me the most expensive, the most powerful. Powerful? Is that powerful? That's a good word.
That's a word.
I'll use that.
We're gonna go with that.
The most powerful inebriants I've ever had. I would not drive in my own home state right now, I'll tell you that. But however impaired I may be in some motor vehicle assassinations at this moment, I can certainly roll up and butt fuck NephillimFree. And I'm looking forward to that.
All right. Let's see.
And I don't mean to show any inappropriate disrespect, because no amount of disrespect would be inappropriate.
That's the beauty of this show. You never know. Well, you think you come in going that we're closing up, and then a debate between Arn and Neffy happens. So that's the beauty of the show.
Yeah. And I was expecting
what we need to
here
do
I was
is
expecting that I was going to have to roll up and smoke the colon of Kent fucking Hovind again.
No, he's
instead,
debating Esteban.
Whatever fucking happened to Kent, I will hide his ass from Aaron Ra under any excuse. Hovind, I get to fucking anally rape NephillimFree.
We're gonna have to.
So looking forward to that.
We're gonna have to Neff. We're gonna have to do this on another night, because we do have our flat Earth debate coming up now. I didn't realize what time it was, but we were supposed to start at 10:30 on that.
Are you
I'm
serious?
having a Google Hangout
Yes.
here after the show.
I was ready
would
for
like
an
to,
act.
if I
I was
could speak
ready
without
for an act of
talking over
violence.
I'm having a
Aaron,
hangout myself immediately after this one if Aaron Raw would like to come in and have a one-on-one debate with me in there, he's welcome to do so. I'd be happy to share the link to join with him.
That's completely your if you like to do that.
You asked to come in, I can get someone to moderate.
Aaron, we've got
we can have me and the guy in his dirty Fruit of the Looms who never wears pants on any of his podcasts.
So,
have
Aaron,
a
would you like
debate
to
as much as I would love that.
As
much as I would love that, we have
with a moderator, Aaron. Would you
as
like
much
to do
as I would
that?
love that, we had another show already booked that is getting ready to come on. So I have to be respectful to them at least too. But Aaron, he's going to give you a link.
To switch over to the porn channel this early in the evening.
I think so, but we can do this on another night. We just have to.
I didn't get a response.
You might have to
from him.
switch over
I
a little early.
If he would join my hangout that I'm about to start and debate
Although
one-on-one.
Neff wants you to join his hangout.
I suspect that Neffy and I might have the same porn channels, because I remember another debate that Neffy has done where he accidentally revealed the porn channels that he visits every night.
Aaron Raw, are you willing to join my hangout and debate one-on-one with me with a moderator as soon as this show ends?
I would love to. Who would you have as a moderator?
A friend of mine named Standing for Truth is going to be present with me. I'm quite sure that he'd be happy to moderate for us with a timer.
You can't have somebody who's claiming to stand for truth, but who actually objects to anything called truth. You have to have somebody who actually understands what truth is.
He has integrity. He'd be happy to moderate with a timer. And I don't know why you should reject the debate.
And I know that you, NephillimFree, don't like what the facts are.
So the answer is
no. You
no.
certainly aren't going to have anybody moderate for you that appreciates what those facts are.
Steve, would
you can send it to me, but hold on. I have to say goodbye to you, and Aaron, thank you for stopping by. But we do have to close so that we can move on to
the fucking party.
Well, we got his answer, didn't we?
You are the man.
I left
You
I
are the
left
man.
a huge fucking party where people were
You-
filling me full of 18% ABV. People
Kyle,
were buying
thanks
me
for inviting
beer
me in
to
talk
come
to you.
to come
I
back to
enjoyed
my
meeting you
hotel room to
What's
to
the drink?
argue with what I thought was going to be Kent, his fucking ass, fraudulent ass
No.
Hovind.
Kent had
Instead,
a
I get
no.
I get Nephilim, the fucking second ass option free, and you're telling me that I have to wait until later? What?
No, you
I
can
already
debate.
have my condom
you can
on,
debate.
damn it.
You can debate Nephi now. He's going to. I hope he's not too
Arn?
too angry. No, Arn. I sent you a when we found out that Kent was not coming on the show. I sent Arn a message to ask him if he would like to come on and talk with Nephi. I assumed the same time that Steve got Dr. Gart on, but apparently that got the message that Kent wasn't. He didn't show up. We had Nephi. I guess got lost. Okay, so I guess you never know what's going to happen on this show.
Wow,
Never know
that
gonna
sucked.
come
Though.
by.
I would have kept that going for at least another hour or two. Flat Earth can wait. Man, that was
I
was 4 years in the making. That
But
was
we have
4
to- we
years
have
in the
to be-
making. They have never
We
spoken
have
to
to
each
be
other ever.
we have to be respectful to the other guys, and I don't think it
Can we
would
push
have.
it back?
It wouldn't have
That
gone
was
anywhere.
4
It's already
years in the
again,
making.
I don't care. I have to be respectful to the guests. We have to do what's right. We do what's right on this show, not what's convenient or what will benefit us all the time.
Or you just ask them,
but,
can we push it back an hour? And they say yes. There you go.
Yeah, but I did that. It's not an option. Fight the Flat Earthers in England. How are you going to keep somebody up at 4 o'clock in the morning when they're waiting to come on a debate? That's rude. But anyway, we're not having this conversation. We're doing the right thing, and we're going to close out. We're going to do the Flat Earth debate here in about 15 minutes. So make sure that you join us back. If you're looking for the Kent Hovind debate, that will be tomorrow at 8 p.m. and Eastern. So we will see you then, or in just a couple of minutes.